A very good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where and when you're watching us from. My name is Mutadhiwa Shirawanyaga, Mujiro wa Bariakari Jithi. Nagwihoka kumangogoshetheria ciumaga huho. Muri thayo, thayo, thayo. Today is the 10th day of March, the year is 2024, and this is State of the Continent. So we are here to tell you what has been happening in the continent for the better part of last week, depending on whether today is your first day of the week or it is the last. Basically, what has been happening since you were last here on air when you're talking about issues happening in the continent. I'm sure tomorrow our Muslim brothers and sisters are starting the holy month of Ramadan. So people are getting into a different mood right now. The Catholics are already in the Lent period. So it's a holy month properly from tomorrow. So we'll be getting to hear more of that. However, joining me is the normal panelists that nobody is new here anymore. So I think we'll start with the man in blue. Jeff, kindly introduce yourself. Tell us how you are and how the week has been for you. Mambo inakaa namna gani?
Thank you, Ashira. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Waheto. My week has not been so smooth. It's been up and down, trying the best. And it's good to be the same panelist again, discussing different topics with the aim of empowering more young people. Thank
I can also see the lost son, the prodigal son of the soil. Kennedy Kipto is back. Kennedy, how are you? Umekuwa wapi all that time?
Fine, and thank you, Ashira. Good evening, everyone. As you've heard, my name is Kennedy Kipto Keter. I've been around, but we've been trying to fix a lot of things, especially with the current economic situation, and now that we are having this show during end month, you can understand what the week and the weekend has been like. But we are rolling with the punches and we keep grinding. Landlord akipiga mlango, wewe pia unapiga mlango ya huko kwingine kwa serikali, lazima tu mambo iingiane. So I'm good and I'm glad to be back and I hope to engage you more. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know which world Kipto is living in. He's saying it's an end month. But maybe Mina, you can help us understand this. How are you?
you.
Tell us more, maybe.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. My week, just like all the other weeks before, has been hectic, but that's what it means to be a man. And I was also wondering what month or what calendar system Peter uses, because for me, this is just the beginning of the month. But you never know. Maybe he's
Uh,
using the Ethiopian calendar. We're all in Africa, so he chose to take one from our neighbors. Anyway, I'm happy to be here and share news about Africa with you guys.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We appreciate you sparing your time for this State of the Continent show that we will be having for the next couple of minutes. So, as usual, you know the fashion. I am going to start in Senegal, and I've been following up this story for some time now. I think for the past two consecutive State of the Continent, I've been talking about Senegal, and today I'm still following it up because it's just a developing story every time. Because now Senegal, they're now getting into that political. How can we call it, climate, and that now it's even getting hotter by the day because now the Senegal's presidential elections date are set, but now there's a lot of uncertainty that is coming with it, especially from that country, because now the presidential candidates kicked off their campaign yesterday, that was on Saturday, and this was following a lot of protests that we have been seeing in Senegal for quite some time now. So Senegal has been having a lot of issues. And you remember, as we said last time, 19 candidates are vying for the top position in that country. So you can imagine how the political climate will be. And remember, the incumbent president, as at now, is not vying for the seat anymore. So Senegal is things are not looking really good, but we really hope that everything at the end of the day will be peaceful and will be okay. I don't know if Mina, you got a chance to follow up that story, and if any one of you has any comment on that.
Indeed, I got the chance to follow the story. I think we also talked about it 2 weeks ago, where the president was saying if the elections come, he'll hand over power peacefully. And I remember I said there are fewer things I trust than the words of a politician, and my sentiments have not changed thus far. And I was trying to look at the situation within West Africa. There have been a lot of coups in that area. So you wonder, is Senegal headed the same way, or will they conduct the elections peacefully? The best we can do for now is just look at the situation from afar and hope the best comes of it for the people of Senegal.
Indeed, I know Ken, you're you love following up this. I don't know whether you follow the developing story from Senegal.
I have not followed it to the latter, but then one thing I can assure you, Ashira, is that the situation in West Africa currently is one that is going to adversely affect the elections in Senegal, because a region or a particular entity always has this euphoria within the larger region affecting them. So the West Africa in recent past has witnessed coups and coups and coups, and if the election in Senegal is going to be, is going to be petitioned or is going to raise suspicion in any case, then you can be sure that it's not going to be a smooth ride towards the end and even afterwards. So what we just hope for right now is that the current regime is going to conduct the election in a fair manner, and the opposition also is going to accept, and whoever is going to win and whoever is going to lose should be ready to bring the other person um, into that leadership space and work together, because failure to do so, someone would want to claim that the election has been rigged or stolen, even if it has not, and that of course will go a long way in inciting violence and disorder within the country, because every other person has his followers. So what we really want to see and wish to see is that we will have a smooth transition of power, and the citizenry will also be willing and patient to follow the rule of law. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we hope for that too. We hope that our brothers find peace and the transition is as smooth as can be. And now I'd like to take you guys all the way to Ethiopia, from the west to the east, to our neighbors in Ethiopia, where, according to the latest reports, our brothers are really suffering because the Tigray region is on the brink of famine. And if you remember, this region has been at war for close to 2 years now, the war between the TPLF and the Ethiopian government. So it has escalated to a point where the people there that now cannot do their farming activities. And to make it worse, there's been a very bad famine not famine, a very bad drought because of issues to do with climate change. So now they are at war and they can't plant food. So the people there are really suffering. There have been now close to almost 400 deaths due to this famine. And to make matters worse, there is famine, yes, and before they had been receiving food aid from the USAID and from the British government. But somewhere along the way, we are in Africa, somewhere along the way, the relief food found its way into people's house, into people's homes, and these people were not meant to access that food. So you really wonder in Africa where people even go to the point of stealing relief food. So because of that issue of relief food being stolen, these governments or these supportive organizations withdrew their efforts, withdrew their support, and the people there are really suffering. And from an observer's point of view, can't help but feel bad and feel for these people because they found themselves in the middle of a war which they know nothing of, and they are suffering because of that war. And from us here in Kenya, where we've enjoyed peace for all so long, we can only hope and pray that the people of Ethiopia find hope, and find a quick solution to that problem, because it's really, really affecting them. And I think, Jeff, you might have come into that situation. We might have read of it, and I'd like to just hear what you think of it. Is it right? Is it wrong? Will they ever find a solution for what they've been facing thus far?
Okay, Collins. I recently read an article about that story, and one thing that caught my attention is that there is a woman who has 10 children, and 2 of them are kids who are very malnourished. So she's depending on the health services and centers around her to cater for her kids. The woman, she's a farmer. She said she has nothing. She's selling her cattle, property to earn a living. So the same case about Ethiopia, about the government authorities stealing food. I heard a news presenter saying that the government is using scorched earth policy to help counter the enemies. Yeah, and now going to Nigeria, our brothers. Now in Nigeria, inflation has been high since this year, starting of this year. And the response was that people are now going to warehouses and stealing food. So the government now try to counter that issue with increasing security in agencies and warehouses so that to stop stealing of food. And we hope, nilikuwa dhani maisha ni ngumu kila mahali, nilikuwa dhani maisha ni ngumu Kenya pekee, but we just come to recognize that it is ni ngumu kila mahali. So what do you think about that, Victor?
One thing for sure is that the said countries are not so the situation in those countries are not looking so good, especially in Ethiopia, and you would really get the dire situation when you look at the combination of these two tragedies. Here we're having war that seems not to end, and that seems not to be finding a solution anytime. And then on the other side, we're having a famine. And to make it even worse, people are now looting the relief that is meant for those people who have been affected by this same famine and war. And how does this happen? It happens under the watch of the very leadership that is expected to alleviate the effects of these very things we are talking about. And it only means one thing, that the leadership has failed to to provide a solution to its people, and it has further gone ahead and even failed more by failing to protect those who have already been affected. So it is we are in a bad position, and things are looking so bad to the continent, because of course if one of us is suffering, it means that the entire region is finding finding trouble in handling the same the same situation. That takes me to what has been happening in the Sahel region. For those who do not know, the Sahel region is it's some region in west and north, between that sits between Savannah and the Sahara Desert. And we've seen from last year, after the coups in Niger, in Mali and Burkina Faso, we've seen these three countries trying to shift from from the ECOWAS, the economic bloc in the West, and trying to chant their own paths. And one thing that stands out to me, and something that really means a lot for the continent, is that in the past, I think 1 week or 2 weeks, these three countries have now signed a pact, and they are now forming what we call a confederation. A confederation is a loosely united region, unlike the America, which is a federation, but which also was a confederation until around 1878. And this means one thing to the continent, that the journey towards the unification of Africa and the journey towards the actualization of entities such as the African Free Trade Area is now being realized slowly but surely. Because when these states are now forming a confederation, these three states are forming a confederation where they are having a security pact, and they are promising each other to to move away from the CFA franc, the common currency for the West African bloc, and they now want to chant their own way, which is unique to their own situation, to their own history, and this Wachira means a lot for the continent. I know we've been following up on this, and maybe one of us can also contribute on that.
Yeah. Before I even get more into what is happening in the Sahel region, I can see some comments coming in. That is Peter Moridi. Thank you very much. He's saying very insightful. Thank you very much, sir. He's also saying we keep this going. Indeed, we shall. And Kajim Mashari Mwangi saying tuned. You know, Kajim, I'm hoping to see you on Saturday, this coming Saturday. So going back to what is happening in this, what has been happening there in those regions basically is what is now boiling down to what is happening in Sudan. And in Sudan, basically, there was a UN Security Council meeting that was held on just this other day, on March the 7th, and their main focus was on Sudan. Sudan, there is a war in Sudan. That is the Sudanese army versus the paramilitary RSE actually. There's that war that is happening there. And the concern is this, that this conflict will actually ignite regional instability and bring some very dramatic turns, especially in the Sahel region, all the way to the Red Sea. So things are not really looking good in Sudan. And the UN basically, through now the Security Council, is just urging the people in Sudan, both in the government, in the paramilitary people, to keep it down, because now if they don't come to a resolution, there will be too much effects, not only in Sudan but in the entire Sahel regions, and even moving all the way to the parts of the Red Sea. So we just hope that eventually these people will come to peace, because war has been doing a lot of bad things in Africa. We have seen what Collins is reporting to us from the Tigray region. Basically, that war is just as a result of, that drought, famine rather, is a result of the war. The war has some issues to do with what is happening there. So it's quite unfortunate, and we just hope at the end of the day that things will look good in that region. It has been a war-torn region for a very, very long time. We saw now eventually, even after South Sudan got independence, we thought that things will be looking good in Sudan, but things are not really looking good in that region. What we do hope is that things will eventually look well.
Yeah, we do hope that things will look well. And just briefly to comment on what Kipto has said on these West African states uniting to form a collective which brings to the table a higher bargaining power than what they had before. I can't help but think of my history when I read of organizations like the Organization of African Union, of African Unity, where African leaders came together and said, you know what, we are a people who share common heritage, and all we want for our people is to build that collective, or that spirit of cooperation. And I hope that it might have started in the West, but in our lifetimes we'll see a time where Africa will be united, things that Gaddafi wanted but probably didn't happen. And on the war in Sudan, I think sometimes as a people we like to blame others for causing our wars, but all it takes is the people of Sudan to come together and sit down and agree that war leads to nothing, because at the end of all wars, our leaders come down and sit and negotiate. So why not negotiate before the war has even started? And I'd like now to take us back to Nairobi, where something I thought I'd never see in my lifetime happened. Two planes collided mid-air in Nairobi, just close to the Nairobi National Park. One plane was a Cessna. It was a tourist plane ferrying people from Nairobi to the coast, and the other plane was being operated by a student pilot. Sadly, the two occupants of the small plane being operated by the student pilot lost their lives. But I'm coming to think of how this situation came to be. Because, for two planes to collide, a lot must have gone wrong. Because these planes they are always under radar surveillance. So there's always someone watching these planes. But we in Kenya, anything can happen. And
Minor people might, when I heard of this, many people are saying, isn't his stories a jabba? You only
yeah,
talk of these things never happening.
because
Two planes
these things
colliding.
you only see these things in movies. So I'm trying to look at the odds of two planes colliding, because first of all, a trained pilot and a pilot flying a commercial airplane should not share the same airfields. I believe these pilots being trained as they take certain routes to avoid collision with these pilots undertaking their normal activities. And I was reading the news on this, and the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority is trying to investigate. They've not yet come to a concrete reason for the accident happening, but we hope they'll get to the end of it and avoid loss of lives in such ways in future.
Collins, it's so sad that we are losing people every day through accidents, and we just hope for the best in our transport and communication networks. And the ministry should pull up their socks. Now, on a positive note, in Mombasa, I read an article that 80% tons of waste is released per day in Mombasa, which 20% includes plastic. And in those 20%, only 5% is recycled. So what about the 90% which is not recycled? It is let through the ocean, our beautiful ocean. So a young startup organization by young people started to recycle the plastics to form school desk and chairs. So the process is they collect or buy the plastics, they go and shred, they cut it into pieces, and then they wash them. They later burn into a higher steam, and they use toxic waste and combine them with the recycles for cartons, and that's how desks and chairs are formed. On a positive note, in Mombasa, you find that almost 3 students are using one desk, and the recycling is helping many students in Mombasa now. You can see every child now has his own desk. On a positive note on education. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good when you see young people doing such amazing stuff. And Etir Loito saying is following good content, brothers. Thank you very much, Etir, for following. And I can also see Triza on WhatsApp and the likes of Mabango Timothy. They are saying they're watching, and Mesha Kotieno. So we know you're here and we appreciate your time. I can see also Mesha Komondi has sent a comment saying that this is always informative. Thank you, Meshach. Now, moving on to another story, Kipto.
Washira, we must have all seen the current passage of the anti-LGBTQ law in Ghana, and it has sparked worldwide, dissent and support on equal measure. And there is a bill that it was a private sponsored bill by one MP from Ghana called I think Sam George, and this bill is called the promotion of proper human sexual human rights and the protection of the Ghanaian family values, and this is a bill that was unanimously passed by the Ghanaian parliament. But one thing that has come out, and one thing that is so funny and ridiculous at the same time, is that the entire West and America are up in arms. Every other person is now giving a press conference. The Secretary of State, the President himself, the European Union, IMF, World Bank, everybody is up in arms. And I wonder, because these people are doing this on the tenet that we are trying to promote democracy, in Africa and the world in particular. But then, what is democracy, Washira? We are tempted to ask ourselves, what is democracy that these people are talking about? Democracy is, the majority having their way and the minority having their say. Now, you want to challenge a law that has been passed by a parliament unanimously without one single opposition, and you want to tell us that they are going against human rights? Really, that is ridiculous. And Washira, people should be allowed to do things and to pass laws depending on their cultural values, on their history, and they are just special, needs within their own jurisdictions. So this is a bill that has sparked worldwide reactions. But one thing that I know for sure is that it has a majority support over 90% within the continent. And just a few people who are trying to, to say that we are going against human rights and so forth and so on. But personally, and the view of many Africans is that we are progressing. In as much as we are now being told that we are retrogressive, we are progressing. And one thing also, we've also seen the World Bank now canceling a loan that was supposed to run for around 5 to 6 years of around 3.8 billion US dollars. We've also seen IMF canceling a loan that was, to the tune of 3 billion as well. But I love the people of Ghana because they are saying we can survive. We can as well survive without your loan. But one thing that is worrying me, Washira, is that the president, Nana Akufo, lacks the balls to now stand and say this is a decision that has been taken by the majority and I'm going to ascend it. But now, he's shifting goalposts and now he's saying, this thing has not come to my desk. And there is somebody who has gone to challenge it in the Supreme Court. So we are yet to say something about this. And Washira, this shows you the level and the depth of imperialism that has come not just economically, but even in our social, trying to eat our social fabric and influence a lot of things within our social setup. And so I hope many other countries are going to follow up. We've had Uganda; they are doing well. Now we have Ghana. We've had Nigeria before, and I hope Kenya through there was also a family protection bill that was brought early last year by one Peter Kaluma. We hope to see it go through, and I think that is progressive. Maybe someone can also add on that.
Okay. More comments before we proceed further. I can see Teresa Mudambo saying the recycling project is very innovative, the one that Jeff was mentioned from Mombasa. And then I can see also Kimani Mwangi saying that while I applaud the efforts to recycle, it is worth noting that recycling is cleaning someone else's mess. We should be individually responsible for our own waste. Okay, thank you, Kimani, for that. I can also see Masharia Mwangi saying that inclusivity perhaps, but it is against our cultural values. That one is reaction to Kipto's developing story from Ghana. Moving on to Cameroon, to another part of Africa, some sports news. Just the other day we are done with AFCON, but there are some people who maybe have noticed this man by the name of Rigobert Song steps down as Cameroon national team coach. So, this coach, he was the head national coach for Cameroon. And Cameroon they really do well in the world of football here in Africa. They're among the best that we have in the continent. And Rigobert Song, is also has been very influential to see that Cameroon has gotten to whatever stretcher that it has gotten to in terms of football. And this news was confirmed to us by Samuel Eto'o, and also there was a letter from the Ministry of Sport from that country that talked about this, the resignation of the Cameroonian national football coach. And Mina, I am sure that the other day we were liking we are likening the way he looks to the Senegal coach. His name is Aliou, if I'm not wrong. I cannot pronounce the other name. Yeah?
It's Aliou Cisse.
Yes. So I'm sure now it will be. I kind of feel sad when this guy is resigning because he did a really good job with Cameroon, and we hope that Cameroon will get a better coach like the one that they had.
Yeah, he did a good job. And Ashira, there's a quote you like saying, "A good dancer knows when to leave the stage," and he's exactly that. And it's very
Mm.
honorable of a man to admit that perhaps he might not be the best for the job, and step down and allow someone else to do the job. So it's not sad. It's just
Could
the
it,
way of
could
life.
it, could it
Yeah,
also,
so you're saying something?
Washira, could it also show that, yes, could it also be an indicator that now, Africa is headed to the right direction in as far as taking responsibility is concerned? Because we've never witnessed anybody resigning, especially from such a leadership position. In what we've seen before is people saying, "I better die than resign." We've seen it here in Kenya. So I think it is a good thing. It means that we are now beginning to take responsibility and accountability within our actions. But I think he was a good guy, as Ashira said. We are going to miss the side they were treating us to, especially with the Cisse of Senegal. But we hope we'll
Yes.
get better and better with our football.
Keep in mind, by sad, I don't mean that it is a bad thing. It's always, goodbyes are never easy. And whenever you have the best doing the best, sometimes it's not a really a good feeling when they're leaving, but it's honorable of him. And we are proud of him for doing whatever he has done. And we also congratulate him for the good job that he has done with Cameroon. So I think that is exactly what I meant when we were talking about sadness in that aspect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this takes me back to sometimes you scroll through comments and Twitter, and people are arguing about the situation in which Kenya has found itself in. And someone says right there, a certain someone at the helm should resign. But you all know that's never going to happen. And just last week in Kenya, the Haitian Prime Minister visited to discuss issues to do with deployment of Kenyan officers in Haiti. Haiti has been at war for, I think, close to 2 years now. Their former president was assassinated. The prime minister took over for a certain duration, but gangs have taken over the entire city. It's gotten to a point that even the entire city had to be shut down, particularly on this day, last Thursday, when the president visited Kenya. The violence was so much that even the airport had to be shut down, businesses shut down, scores of people are dead, others are injured. And these gangs are basically saying, we don't want UN intervention into matters of our country, because to them, the UN or these US forces don't understand necessarily what's going on in their country. They don't understand their realities. They want to govern themselves and they want to chart out a future for themselves, which they believe will not be helped by these Kenyan officers visiting that country. And I was trying to look into that situation. Kenya, Kenya, in the context we find ourselves in, there are not enough officers in the country. So I wonder, why would we send our children to go and die? Because to me, basically, what we are doing is sending them to go and die for in a war in which they know nothing about. So why would we not deploy these officers in our country to deal with the scores of issues we have in our country? And I
Before
had at some point
Jeff comes in mind, you have forgotten another quote that I like, which is, "You cannot give what you don't have," and I think Kenya, as a country, we are trying to be giving what we do not have, really, because we still have problems in Baragoi, we still have problems in northeastern, some parts of northeastern, we have some problems in West Pokot, and then we are sending some troops to Haiti. Personally, I don't think it is really makes sense. Okay, we are trying to be helpful. We are trying to be of help to these Haiti people. However, what about ourselves? There's some aspect of nationalism, and I'm also being objective here because remember, we are sending our people sort of to places where they don't know, foreign places, and you have mentioned Kennedy and Mina had mentioned something initially about resignation, and then me, anytime resignation is mentioned, I remember Kimunya must go. Kimunya must go, but Kimunya said, "I'd rather." Comments coming in, and Teresa Mudambo is saying Haiti is a mess right now. At the moment, it's going it's going through a state of emergency because the gangs have overthrown the government, deploying deploying Kenyan officers is the worst mistake. Yeah, that's Triza Kimani Mwangi saying, to quote a certain wise man, in quotes, you cannot give what you do not have. And then he says, the wise man quoted himself. Okay, thank you, Giovanni. And then I can see Triza Mudambo saying, the people in Haiti were even demonstrating, saying they don't want our Kenyan officers. Indeed. This is a topic that I think we should get in depth into soon enough. Yeah, Jeff, you can come in now. I know you had
No,
something to say.
I heard Jeff was mugged on his way home last week, so there is nobody better to speak on this topic than him, because the officers who are supposed to be protecting him apparently are not there.
Uh, Collins, just like Washira said, you cannot help someone even while you have not helped yourself. So I found it difficult. In Kenya, we are trying to avoid the issue of bandits. More people are being killed in West Pokot. And you find that the same officers who are supposed to guide our people in Kenya, they are going to guide somewhere place. So I don't support that. And now in Somalia has gained full membership of East African Community. This is after they applied their first application in 2012, and it has been approved after 12 years. So the Minister of Commerce and Industry completed the admission process in 4th March, and they were now regarded as full membership of East African Community. This is positive because this will engage cooperation in terms of trade, investment, and I believe Somalia's economy will go up. And I like to point out to Kipto to comment on that about the full membership or ownership of East African Community by Somalia.
Yeah, and just before I jump to that, I would also wish to give a few insights on the Haiti case. Today, just like Teresa Mudambo has told us, I think the Prime Minister has now run away from the country because the gangs have now taken over, like, completely. And Washira, the worst creation of any society is a man who has nothing to lose. These gangs do not want the help of anybody, whether UN, whether Kenya. They are just saying, you guys, you keep your things to yourselves. We love it this way, and it's bad. And we hope the future maybe things will change. On Somalia now fully joining the East African Community, that is a plus. But then on the other side, while we are making gains as a community, we are also making some retrogressive steps. In the past 1 week, you must have been treated to some very funny comments on Twitter. There's a verified account by the East African Community. It's called the East African Community, and it is verified, and it has been established that this is a fake account. But then it has been running some information about the formation of a common currency in the East Africa Community. It's known as the Shiafra. And it has treated us to some very ridiculous information, and we were wondering what the hell, who is running this thing, until we were told that this is a fake account, but it is verified, and you see it is still running. You can confirm that the account is still there. Nobody is doing anything about it. So we welcome the Somalia with two hands, but on the other side there is still so much to be done. But like I said, it is a plus, and we hope to have more countries joining us. And it's not just restricted to countries that theoretically come from the east. It is something that cuts across the continent. Anybody can join, and I'll liken it to what I talked about before, the alliance of the Sahel states. One of them will now form a basis for they will form a basis to the unification of Africa, because when now people will start joining, and we have a constitution, we have a common currency, then that will mean we are progressing towards what we want. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kipto, for that. And the African Union Heads of State Summit in Addis Ababa, I think you are also to mention something on exactly what is happening in Addis Ababa.
Yeah, just a few weeks ago, we had the 37th Ordinary Summit of the Heads of State in Addis Ababa. And one thing that stood out to me was something that is not worth celebrating, but should be actually viewed with a lot of contempt and ridicule. You know, the current, pressing need, especially in Africa, is to silence the guns, to end conflict that we witnessed in Ethiopia, in Sudan, in Senegal, and many other parts of the continent. But then one funny thing was that this was not in the main agenda. It was not in the main agenda of the African Union Summit. In fact, the only thing that was mentioned was the war in DRC Congo, and it was mentioned in passing. It wasn't the main agenda. The main agenda of this were, internal realignments, basically administrative, and Agenda 2063. Now, one funny thing, Washira, one of the points in Agenda 2063 was that we need to silence the guns and many other things that we need to achieve by 2063. But then you are trying to bring you are bringing in 10 before 9. There's a way they say it in my mother tongue. It doesn't come out well in English. But these guys are now bringing maybe 10
maybe
before
Kito, you can say
9.
it. Maybe you can say it in your mother tongue. We might understand.
So these people, what they are doing in Kalenjin, they say Magindo une taman sokol. You cannot start talking about 10 when you haven't handled 9, right? Now, these people are discussing Agenda 2063 when part of those problems that we need to be solved right away are within our doorstep, and they are not starting with it. In fact, the discussion will gain more credibility if they started handling and settling the issues at hand. So to me, I think that was a very useless summit. It was a photo session. I would call it that. It was a photo session, and it is so unfortunate. And you see, if you saw in that sitting, there were some people from the EU, people from the UN, people from the G7, and their seats had been reserved. Come on, this is an African agenda. What is the AU doing there? And on the other side, we are having heads of state that were not attending, and nobody was concerned about them. Like those ones from Sahel, they were not in attendance because the claim is, what are we going to do in an organization that is basically not even looking at the issues of the African, the African child? So to me, Washira, that was a photo session.
Okay. We hear it was a photo session. Moving on to the south, in South Africa. South Africa has narrowly avoided the recession in Q4 amid, sluggish growth. And what are we talking about here? When we talk about a recession basically is when you 2 consecutive quarters of failing to put an economic output, a growth. And you can imagine that the economy of South Africa has only been growing by just 0.1% on a quarterly basis. 0.1%. And now it has just averted narrowly for them to get into a recession. They have averted it narrowly by very narrow margins to get into a recession. However, economists are telling us that, in the next quarters that follow, and especially now the GDP growth for the year 2024 for South Africa will be between 0.7 to 1.5%. And basically, what we are seeing at the end of the day is that South Africa has a long way to go in terms of growing the economy, because they're a powerhouse in Africa. So it is quite sad when we see now the economy is happening, what is happening in South Africa. I'm not saying that Kenya is any better, at least South Africans have been honest enough with their numbers, and we can see that it is indeed 0.1% rather than being told whatever sort of nonsense that goes on in our country here sometimes. So I don't know if Maina, you're able to see that, and I don't know what are your thoughts on it.
Here in Kenya we are told tutafanya, tutajenga, tumeweka.
Tumetenga.
Yeah. South Africa to me is probably one of the strongest economies in Africa. They're endowed with resources which some of us look at with a sort of admiration. I mean, they are second only to DRC in terms of these natural resources. I mean, they have gold, they have diamonds, they have silver, and that their economy is not growing is a worrying point for me, because it's a country whose economy should be growing exponentially. I think that this might be tied down to their leadership, because it's the leadership of a country that either drives it forward or breaks it. And I remember in our conversations with Ali from South Africa, I was surprised that there is load shedding in a country as big as South Africa. I'm surprised that people miss power for extended periods of time. And I'm not very privy of the information of everything that goes within South Africa, but it's up to their leadership to take charge and ensure the country moves in the right direction. And still remaining in the south of Africa, there was a story in Zimbabwe that interested me quite a lot. Because the news coming out from Zimbabwe is that USAID officials were forcefully evicted. And I was looking into the story, and it feels to me that the spirit of Mugabe is not yet dead. Because, Mugabe, in his wisdom, did not think of the white man as being superior to him. He thought of the white man, if I would say, as being either equals or inferior to him, and he got into a lot of problems with European countries, to a point that Zimbabwe is even sanctioned for a while. And it looks that like his spirit is still living on, because USAID officials were forced out of the country. And what surprised me most is what those officials had gone to do in Zimbabwe. Because I'll say it and I'll quote, they had gone to conduct an assessment of the development and governance context in Zimbabwe. So me as an African, I'm wondering, what authority do they hold to assess the development and governance of Zimbabwe? And that they were chased out of the country, I'm trying to be politically correct, but I think the Zimbabwean officials had root cause to evict them from the country. I'm not saying it was right, because I'm against forceful evictions. I think what they would have done is tell these officials that you're in our country to do this and this and this, and we in our wisdom think that it's not right for you to do this and this and this. So you will maybe just take your leave and allow us to handle our own affairs.
I hope our new friend from Zimbabwe by the name Muvavarivo will be telling us, Muvavarivo from Powerful Africa will be telling us what exactly is happening in their country. Is it true the spirit of Mugabe still lives? Or as Kipto will put it, the spirit of Mugabe is still hovering around the sons and daughters of Zimbabwe. Yeah, Maina.
When I grow up, before you proceed, when I grow up, I want to be like Mugabe. You see, you can feel his Africanism. Now, going towards to Nigeria, on sad news, 287 children were abducted in northwest. The assailants were timed in the morning, and they went around the school and waited when the children were ready to go to the class, and they took all the 287 children. But according to the news at first, they said only 100 children were abducted. But according to the head teacher, when he revisited the town, he counted that the missing children were 287. And I really noticed that it has been something that has been going on. It began in 2014, where 200 schoolgirls were being abducted, and the assailants were asking for huge amounts of money. And I believe it's sad, because you are taking innocent children when you want money. Even though inflation is sad in Nigeria, you have to find other ways to upgrade ourselves. What do you think about it?
Before I mentioned something on that. What Maina was talking about. I think we need more forceful evictions of these so-called charity entities in Africa. Like, what are you doing? Who gave you the permission? Where do you get that local standard to come and monitor our economy and everything? Like, you go do it in your place. We know these are people who claim to be, to be bringing charity, while what they take from us is more than what they give. So I need to see more of that, and I hope anytime you hear USAID, or their brother and sisters doing such a thing in Kenya, anybody can alert me anytime, and I will be there. And now on the abduction of the 287 children in Nigeria, it is so sad because these people have been targeting the most vulnerable in the society, that is children, the elderly, and sometimes women. And I wonder, because it is not the first time we are witnessing these things. We've seen it in especially that part of Africa, the western part of Africa, with the Islam insurgents and the other terrorist groups, abducting children and women. But then because it is not a new phenomenon. What is the government doing about it? What are the authorities doing about it? Nigeria has the largest population in Africa. Nigeria has a police force that is said to be working so well. Come on, what are they doing about it? It is so sad. And who are these people? What do they want? And what can be done to to alleviate this? So I cannot conclusively talk about that because I do not have enough information about it. But then I think it is also a failure on the side of the authorities, and hopefully we are going to get a solution to that. On a further note, we have an ongoing discussion and the debate on the African Union Commission, and it is a topic that has become so relevant in Kenya now that we have one of the top contenders to the position of the chairman of the African Union Commission is our very own from the country, one Baba Raila Amolo Odinga. And to me, I would choose to talk about discussion that we're having right now in the country is that of
Okay. I think we have lost Kipto there. So
this is our beers.
Oh, he's back. Kipto, you can proceed. Okay. I think we're having some network challenges from Kipto's side. Just to as we are wrapping it up, I think Kipto was talking about the AUC contender who is now Baba himself. Kipto, are you back? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm back. So what I was saying was I choose to look at it from a different perspective, and like the majority of Kenyans who are saying that it is time for Baba, to be given some sympathy. But rather, I would give him credits because the African Union needs leadership. It needs leadership, and when I say it needs leadership, then I mean for it to achieve that which it was meant to do, there needs to be good leadership. And Raila Odinga deserves this, not because he's my countryman and not because he deserves sympathy, but I think Raila Odinga is a socialist in nature, and something which I think it will also give him some problems with the establishments, because you all know who are calling the shots. You know, the America and the West are also trying to know who is this getting it. Does he play by the rules? Does he play by the book? Wachira Raila deserves this seat because of his socialist tendencies. Africa Union needs a socialist and not the capitalist we've seen before. This is someone who's going to drive the African Union towards a better, agenda, because this is someone who is in charge of the entire administration of the African continent, of the African Union. And to me, Baba deserves it because of his experience, vast experience. I think he's been alive at a time when the socialists and the capitalists were in a very raw ideological war. And so all we can do now is to pray for Baba, to give him our best wishes. There's not much we can do. I have seen politicians running around and saying, oh, we are going to support Baba, but nobody is going to listen to them. The people are going to vote at the heads of state. Tell me what Kiborek, an MP from Mogotio, can tell Museveni to vote for Raila Odinga, or what can Murkomen do, or what can Kimani Ichung'wah, which vote can Kimani Ichung'wah get for Baba? So they also need to be honest, but it is their time to shine anyway. But all in all, we wish Baba the best, and we hope to see him steering the continent, because the continent comes first. If he did not have the credentials, personally, I will say let's get someone else, whether from outside the country. We get the best results. So we wish him well, and
I think Macharia Mwangi really disagrees with Kiptoo here, because he says that WSR has already killed the opposition, and here he wants to send Uhuru Kenyatta to UN come 2026. Kamwene group led by Kioni will and is seeing dust, and he also says that I do not think Kalonzo can sustain presidential campaigns. Otherwise, Raila deserves it only because he's Kenyan, not on merit. I think we will close it at that. That has been the state of the continent this week. And before we call it a show, I think Jeff Minor, we have been talking about the scavenger hunt for so long, and finally, the next time we will be back here on the state of the continent, the scavenger hunt will have already happened. So, Jeff, so you can wrap it up. You can tell us what is happening so that Minor can come and close it up before we close the show.
Oh, okay. Thank you again, Wachira. And one thing I can promise everyone, that the event is very, very beautiful. And we visited the Word of Life several times. We have been planning for that, for the scavenger hunt, multiple times. And we'll post a snippet of how the Word of Life looks like tomorrow. And those who have not paid, please pay. There will be a lot of activities behind the scavenger hunt event. So please attend if you want to gain your childhood memory.
Yeah, Minor.
Yeah, indeed, it will be a fun event, and there's only a few days left and a few slots left also. So if you don't pay in time, there's a chance of you missing out. And here we are democratic, so fast come, fast served. You might find yourself missing out on the event, but it will be a very eventful session, and we hope we'll see you guys there. It's only 1,000 shillings. Right now, there's no option of lipa mdogo mdogo. That one is closed for now. So for now, you pay the entire amount and wait for further communication from us.
Yeah, I hope people will start asking us what democracy means in Africa. What I'm basically saying is this, that the scavenger hunt is happening, and it is happening this coming Saturday. And hopefully we will get to to meet with you physically, because I'm sure maybe some of the people that you get to see on YouTube, will meet them physically. Jeff Waheto here, Maina Ulishasha. I don't know if Kennedy Kipe is coming. I heard somewhere that he's coming. I hope to see him there also, and the likes of Macharia Mwangi, Timothy Mabango, Natasha, you name them, Triza, Abigail, Mwangi. We're hoping to see the people who is on screen on that day. It's a chance for you to network. It's a chance for you to have a lot of fun and also search for this treasure that you're finding. I hope you'll get to win it. And then I can see Machere Mwangi saying that scavenger hunt in it. Yeah, Bajari Omondi will see you then. And also, basically, for those people who want to come but they cannot be able to come, Mina just told me that you are given a chance to pay for somebody. Maybe you have been blessed enough to pay for somebody. Even you come yourself and pay for somebody else, you never know. Or you yourself cannot make it and you want to pay for somebody. There's still that option. You can communicate with us with the numbers that are on our social media platforms. Another thing, Afro Quiz is happening, and we have seen a lot of engagement with it. So if you have not known what Afro Quiz is, go to our Instagram page, Facebook, anywhere we are, the ones that are rolling down the screen, you'll see Afro Quiz. It's a very, very informative and funny, interesting questions going on there. And we hope that one day you'll be able to be part of Afro Quiz also. Now, Ramadan starts tomorrow. So we want to wish our Muslims brothers and sisters Ramadan Mubarak. And therefore, on Wednesday, African Corner, we will be talking about Ramadan. So what Ramadan is. For those of us who do not know what Ramadan exactly is, you can be sending in your questions so that people will be telling us exactly what do we mean when we say Ramadan. We know a lot of Easter, we know, and what happens in Easter for the Christians. We don't know what happens I'm sure most of us do not know what happens exactly in Ramadan. And then in future, hopefully, Ken will reach out to his friend from the Hindu religion. Will also come and tell us what happens in that religion. We want to know what happens across these religions and various spiritualities. And with that, I'd like to end the show and wish you a good night and a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week ahead. We hope to see you on the scavenger hunt come the 15th of March. My name is Mutali Wachirawanyaga. Ishide Giranasia Mobi Muburi. Dayo.